Good evening, everyone, and welcome to your sister Erica. It is Tuesday, and I am live. I'm taking a moment to go ahead and go live in Instagram. As always, I'm going to say, hey, family. So great to see you here this evening with me on the second episode of your sister Erica as I do the Tuesday sister check in. So let me start off by just saying, how are you today? How are you, family? How are you feeling? How are you showing up today? What's on your hearts? What's on your mind? Just in case no one has asked you those questions today, I want you to know that I care. I care about what's on your heart. I care about what's on your mind. I care about how you're feeling. And so, if you are with me live, you can go ahead and put that information in the comments or in the chat. If you're catching this on the replay, it's okay for you to go ahead and put it in the comment or the chat as you receive this information. But I want to do a quick check in with you, invite you into this space as we're reaching the 7 o'clock hour just now. Welcome in. Please grab a beverage. You can grab your dinner if it's a late dinner. I have a cold glass of crystal light here as I am attempting to reduce my sugar intake, but I need something with a little bit of flavor. So again, this is Erica Jefferson Rivers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please come in, make yourself comfortable. I just want to talk to you today as your big sis or as your little sis and talk to you a little bit today about how to overcome adult tantrums. So I call it a woman trum or a mantrum. And it's basically just when something happens that causes us to overreact, right? Or to react in a way that's surprising. A lot of times it's acting in a way that's not really conducive or helpful in the situation. And I'll give you a little bit of a backdrop as to why I'm coming there, but I am going to give you four particular steps or tips to follow for you to be able to overcome those moments when you find yourself having a tantrum, or it could just be me, right? It could just be me. I mean, I only have a master's degree in conflict resolution. I've only been mediating for 10 years and teaching conflict skills for ten years. Of course, I wouldn't be the one still having, adult tantrums or overreactions. Well, unfortunately, family, I do. I do. I am still just a woman. I'm still just a person. I am still just a human being, a human becoming. However, I will say that my tantrums or overreactions don't last as long. They are not as detrimental as they may have been in the past. It is something that I recognize in myself and that I continue to work toward. And likely you are also finding that this is resonating with you too. And that's okay. You don't have to tell on yourself. I'm going to tell on myself. Again, I wouldn't have you come into the space to share information with you that I'm not taking myself or that I'm not willing to take myself. Okay. Hey, Vanessa, good to see you. So, this is the month of love. I really thought that I would come to you talking about love today, and I will at some point this month. But I really want to share an experience that I had just today because it's really only helpful if it's relevant to what's happening in our lives in the moment. And so something happened today. It's been really brewing, and I received some information today as I was trying to negotiate something that was really important to me. And I started this negotiation last week. It took an entire week for this company to get back to me with a response. And in that time, I was really hopeful, really excited, really hopeful that things will work out in my favor. And lo and behold, I got the email today that it did not. It was basically the longest no ever. And so I was feeling some kind of way about that, even though I had not really identified what that feeling was. And so as I'm getting up and starting my day, I come into the kitchen. I'm hungry. I already mentioned that I'm hungry. I mentioned to my love, my sugar, my Charles, that I was hungry. And so I was coming to the kitchen, I'm starting to cook something to eat. I just felt my emotions starting to become more and more involved. And I wasn't really able to identify exactly what it was. I just know I was feeling some kind of way. And those pots got to clanking around on that stove. And before you know it, I'm starting to kind of fuss at my love, and things are just starting to go in a bad direction quickly. All right. And so what I was making was pancakes. I'm telling you that because it's relevant to one of the steps that I'll give you later. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how I recovered, right, from that particular situation. So, again, in my effort not to keep you long and also to not feel like I'm preaching or really teaching at you, I'm going to go ahead and share some of the, hopefully what you'll find to be practical tips that you can use to help overcome when you find yourself in these type of adult tantrum situations. And I'm going to say hello to my love Charles, who has joined me live on Instagram. I was just talking about you. Hopefully you missed it. Well, no, actually, hopefully you caught it because you're also a big part and reason in my self growth. And so, and I just want to make sure I'm thanking you for that. All right. So if you find yourself, right, in a place, you've had a reaction or overreaction, maybe you've said or done some things, particularly in relationship, right? There's someone else around who has received your wrath to some extent. How do you recover from that? So, like I said, I'm going to give you 4 steps. And the first step, of course, is to breathe. Okay. Now, I want to be really clear. Actually, let me take that back. I want to start with the end in mind. Let's start with the end in mind first. I want us to start first with the end in mind because the end is what you really need to practice before you find yourself in your kind of tantrum, woman-trum, or man-trum situations. So we'll start with the end in mind, and that's with step number 4. And so, with step number 4, what you want to do is start to build an ongoing practice of your coping skills. So, when you are triggered, when you're in the midst of your traumatic moment, your overreaction, it's a lot harder for you to start to think about and use coping skills if you haven't practiced those skills at a time when things were calmer. And so, how do you want to practice your coping skills? One of the things that you want to do is to really start to journal about it. Now, if you are one of those type of people where you know this about yourself, or you've been told that you tend to fly off the handle, you tend to overreact, that when you're upset or you're triggered, you say or do things that harm the people around you, or maybe even it causes some type of difficulty for yourself, I am strongly going to suggest that you start to journal about those incidences. Take a moment and look back and see what you can find out, right? What was the outcome? How did that thing work out for you in your overreaction? It may not have worked out well. What was the intended outcome? More often than not, when we work out of our reactions, our overreactions, as opposed to a thoughtful response, our intended outcome is not met right in that moment. What we usually get is an outcome that is even more entangled, right? It's an outcome that's even more involved. It's an outcome that we're going to have to go back at some point later and try to untangle or try to fix or to mend. Okay. So, really take some time to get honest with yourself and journal out and write out what you learned about yourself before, during, and after that event. In step 4, with practicing coping skills, you also want to have conversation with a trusted friend. That's your home girl, that's your homeboy, that's your home person that knows you. They've seen you in action. They've seen the good, they've seen the bad, they've seen the ugly. All right. And not only are they able to tell you about yourself, but you trust that what they're telling you is coming from a place of love, it's coming from a place of concern, right? It's coming from a place that is invested in you becoming better and doing better. Right? You really do need to be able to see yourself, right, from that outside perspective. The journaling helps you to step out a bit and to see yourself in hindsight. Talking to a trusted friend gives you that other voice, that other set of eyes, that other set of ears, that other experience that can help you really start to see how you were reacting, what you were doing, and what may have even helped to cause that emotional kind of spiral or cascade, which is what I'm going to talk about next. Lastly, building good coping mechanisms should also include you engaging in some physical activity. Now, I have been fighting this for a while now. I have been fighting really getting on board with having a good physical activity regimen. I can say in the 24 straight days I did in January, just in that amount of time, because that's the most recent experience. I also had some experience with exercising regularly when I was getting ready for my wedding, but that was back in 2020, right? That's been a little while now. So I really recommitted in January. And for those first 24 days or so, really the first month, just committing to moving my body and getting that physical activity in, becoming more active, not only help with my physical health, but really help with my mental health. Okay. So you want to journal, talk to a trusted friend, commit to getting physical activity on a regular basis, right? And that is how you're going to get to that fourth step, which is practicing coping skills. All right. So we started with the end of mind. Let's go ahead and rewind this back to step one. So I mentioned that step one is to breathe. Take a deep breath so that you can start to center and calm yourself. Now, I know we've all heard the whole breathing thing. And some days I can be so overstimulated that I'll say if I deep breathe anymore, I'm gonna overdose on oxygen. Like this deep breathing is just not getting me there any longer. And so there is a group called the Emotional Intelligence Network. Excellent information available on their website as well as several YouTube videos. They have a great video that really helps to explain how our emotions create chemicals, that there are chemicals in our body, not just in our brain, but that goes through our body that can start to cascade and to begin to flood our brains and our bodies with chemicals that makes it really difficult for us to key in, to come back present, to calm ourselves so that we can deal with the actual issue or problem that was presented, right? Or whatever happened to trigger that emotional kind of response and cascade. And so I think of this as like the game of telephone. Now, you, I know I'm speaking to a particular demographic and age group when I bring that up, but if you remember the game telephone, it's like you had to tell one person a story, and then that person goes and tells the story, and that person tells another person the story. And by the time you get to the end, like the last five, the fifth person or the sixth person, that story then changed. So what our emotions are doing is that is going these chemicals are going to other cells in our bodies like a game of telephone, and they're saying, hey, we're upset, and they're like, hey, we're upset, and the next thing you know, you have this flood of emotion that's happening in our brains and our bodies. And like I said, it really makes it difficult to choose a response to what's happening versus having that reaction or that overreaction. All right. It causes us to have a lot of times what I call it is a misbehavior, right? It always leads into a behavior, but often it's a misbehavior or overreaction. And so this is your practical tip to help overcome that cascade of emotion that is going to lead us dangerously down that road, right, of having a bad reaction. But what you want to do is not only to breathe, but it is to take a pause for 6 seconds, particularly 6 seconds. And it's because these chemical kind of telephone game is really only happening 6 seconds at a time. But once we get flooded with so much of those chemicals, it's hard to really stop it, right? And so we have to pause at least 6 seconds in order to stop that kind of chemical reaction. How are we going to do that? Not just by counting. So you may have heard, right? You count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? They even talk about this in the video. But so often that's not enough. It's not enough time to really get the whole brain involved. And that's what we want to do in that 6 seconds. Get past just the emotional part of our brain to engage the whole brain. And so in that 6 seconds, you want to do or mentally work out a practical or analytical problem. So this might look like doing 6 math questions or 6 math problems in that time, right? 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 plus 8 is 16, until your brain now stops that cascading and you can start to focus in, right, on what the actual issue is. In my case, I mentioned that I was making pancakes, right? And so, what really helped me start to pause and to stop that emotional cascading was as I was trying to think about how much pancake batter, right, do I need to make, let's say, 6 pancakes. I think I was making four, but right, how much batter do I need if I want to make 4 pancakes versus the amount of batter that's listed on the back of the box, right? An analytical problem that helped me to overcome that cascade of emotion long enough to really start to process, right? What am I feeling? What is happening here? What's going on? Okay. All right. So the first step out of the four, breathe and to take that 6 second pause by doing some type of analytical problem solving within that 6 seconds to help refocus our brain to engage the thinking part of our brain so that we don't have that cascade and flood. Two, second step here is that you want to evaluate the situation and identify the trigger. Now, look, this is going to be very difficult to do in the moment if you haven't created a habit of doing the fourth step, which is really honing and practicing your coping skills. It is possible to do in the moment, but it's very difficult to do in the moment if you haven't practiced it. Right? So there are a couple questions and things here that I think that you will find helpful in order to help you evaluate and identify your triggers. All right, so first and foremost, people, have you had enough rest? And or are you hungry? And or from a grown folk, are you horny? Let's deal with those basic needs first. Let's deal with those basic needs. All right. If I think about my story, especially after I was done cooking and I started eating those pancakes and I was dealing with that hunger, right? As I said in the beginning, I said that I was hungry. I knew that I was hungry. Shouldn't I have been even trying to engage in any type of serious conversation in that moment without dealing with that first? And the less and less hungry that I felt, the more and more foolish I feel, to be honest, about having that kind of emotional overreaction. So please, first, make sure your basic needs are attended to. Attend to your needs. Make sure you're rested. Make sure you're fed. Trying to deal with yourself when you're hangry or even be helpful at all to other people when you're hangry is not going to be helpful. Okay. All right. So another thing that you can do in the meantime, right, as part of your coping is to really start to identify the things that bug you. So you should know in advance, what are your triggers? What are these things that really kind of trigger your emotional overreactions, right? What triggers these misbehaviors? And so you might look at something like this. I use this sheet in the class that I teach on conflict resolution and really start to think about what bugs me. This can be something you can write in your journal. This could be something that you can do as part of the sheet. If there's a way for me to be able to share this, I can share this as a download, possibly for you to use. But there are a few things I want you to really think about. What bugs you? Okay. This also speaks to something I mentioned in a previous video about empowerment as well as recognition, right? Because you're not only going to think about what bugs you, but the recognition about how you contribute is also you considering, uh-oh, how I bug others. It's always two sides. What bugs you as well as how you bug others. Right? So in a previous video I mentioned about empowerment and recognition as key ingredients to living a more authentic life. And I really invite you to make sure you go back and take a look at those videos. It's the 4 gifts on living out loud. Also, take a moment and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and make sure that you're hitting the bell if you're on YouTube, or make sure that you're subscribing and following on Instagram so that you never miss a video or live post, okay? So, as you think about how you are bugged, right? How you're triggered and the way that you trigger other people, those are the type of things that you can go ahead and put in your journal time as you're learning more about yourself. There are also some other great coaching questions you can ask yourself to help you move through these tantrums. And one is, what emotion am I feeling besides anger? So usually by the time you're having a tantrum, you know you pissed off. You already know that. That's without question. I am good. I'm hot. All right. I'm ticked. I'm mad. I'm angry. You know that. But there's also another emotion that lies hidden. And it may be one or two emotions that lies that remains under the surface that's really driving what's really happening. So in my case, what I came to find out was that there were some feelings of unworthiness. There were some questions about my worth and not feeling valued that were underlying all of that behavior that really had nothing to do with who was cooking breakfast, or had little to do. I can't say nothing because that's not true. It had little to do with breakfast being cooked or breakfast being made. And it had everything to do with this kind of failed negotiation that had happened. Right. And so I was having some feelings about and some question about my own worth that had nothing to do with my love, but it played out in my reaction. It played out in my misbehavior in that moment. Your second coaching question is to really identify what specific behaviors triggered the emotion that you're feeling. Not just the behaviors of other people potentially, but also what behaviors of yourself, right? What did you do that also led to or could have potentially led to the feelings, right? Hey, Minister Michelle, welcome. Glad to see you here. So again, that was your second, right? Evaluate the situation, identify the triggers. And then we're moving to the third, right? The third is apologize for any hurtful words or actions, and then to make amends if appropriate. Okay. More often than not, if you have found yourself having a woman trum, a man trum, a person trum, a tantrum, you done acted out, you done showed your behind, you done acted stupid, you done did or said some stuff, you done went buck wild, you done went savage mode, you done went beast mode, whatever you call it, right? You done cuss some folks out, right? Up one side and down the other. You likely have found yourself in a place where you really should, I don't even like to say should, where I'm going to ask you to choose to apologize and to make amends. Not only to the people outside that you're in potential relationship, but really to also apologize to yourself. right? Again, in my previous video, I talked about grace and love, which rounded out the four gifts along with empowerment and recognition. It all needs to stem back into love, right? Take a moment and put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? This is a time to be gracious. This is a time to be empathetic. And it may also perhaps be a time for you to be assertive about what your true needs are once you can identify what they are. But put yourself in the other person's shoes and really consider, would you want to be on the receiving end of your own wrath? I'm gonna answer that question for you. No. No. All right, likely not. All right, so take some time and make sure that you're showing yourself some grace, that you're apologizing in your journal time or in the mirror and say, you know what, E, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I reacted that way. I'm sorry that I allowed my emotions to get the best of me. I now watch this live video that you gave, and I have 4 steps that I am going to commit to using to help myself to be able to recover. Right. So let's recap because I started with the end in mind and I started with 4. But again, I'm going to end there. But the first step again was to make sure that you breathe and practice your 6-second pause by doing an analytical problem solving method within your brain. It helps to slow down that cascade of emotions. The second is that you want to evaluate the situation, evaluate what's happening, and identify the triggers. Identify how you are triggered as well as how you trigger others so that you can become more aware, right, of those things that really bother you and to be prepared when those things happen that, whoa, I'm likely to have an emotional reaction here. Let me start to get myself ready to do this pause so that I can activate the rest of my brain. Third, apologize for any hurtful words or actions and make amends to yourself as well as to others. And then it brings us back to 4, practice those coping skills before you find yourself in your adult tantrum situation. Get in that journal, talk to people who love you, who know you, and engage in physical activity. It makes a huge difference. Okay. So, as I mentioned, I never try to keep you long. I don't want to ever have you come and sit with me and I'm just throwing stuff at you that don't affect me. Baby, I am still learning. I am still growing. And even in all my conflict resolution glory, woohoo, I still find myself in those moments where my grown, almost 50-year-old self really want to lay down on the floor and say, why? Somebody listen to me. Somebody do what I want you to do. Somebody tend to me. I want this. I need this. As opposed to being able to use my big girl, my big big person words and express what my needs are. All right, family. So I hope that that was helpful. I hope that that was helpful to you. I hope that you will take this practical advice. Always interested to know how this works out for you throughout the week. Feel free to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at Erica Jefferson Rivers. Also, connect with me on YouTube at Your Sister Erica. I will be here on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If there's a topic or particular situation that you would like for me to address, please make sure you put that in the comments. And before I go, I do want to announce that next Tuesday is Valentine's Day, and I will have a special guest. Wonder, can you guess who that'll be? Can you guess? Can you guess? I will send out an announcement later as to who that will be and what we'll be on here talking about. You all enjoy the rest of your day, family. I love you. I love you so much. You are wonderful. You are awesome, even when you have your tantrum moments. I'll see you next time.